Hi there, welcome to 90% Knitting. This is episode 332. I'm Lisa, also known as Fiber Nymph on most of social media, and today is Saturday, February 22nd. Welcome to the second half of February. I am running a little bit behind on getting this episode up. I tried to record on Wednesday and then I ran out of time because I had to leave. And I thought I could make do with some of that video that I recorded, but in the end it was just easier to start over. So here I am. It's a Saturday. I don't usually record on Saturdays because generally speaking I'm busy and my husband's home and it just doesn't usually work out. However, we ended up going out for breakfast this morning, which is odd because I love going out to breakfast. I don't know about you, but it's like my favorite meal to go out for, probably because it's the one I go out for the least. My husband does not like going out to breakfast. He thinks it's like a waste of time because he's like, you've got all your breakfast food at home, just eat and you can get busy with your day. But for whatever reason, he actually said, hey, do you want to go over to Brady's for breakfast this morning? I'm like, yes, if you're offering. Brady's is this like little family restaurant that's been in our area forever. It's literally like maybe a mile away from our house. And it's nothing fancy by any stretch, but their food's really good and their breakfasts are so big. Like you eat breakfast there and then you don't have to eat again until dinner time. So I enjoy having breakfast at Brady's. And they always offer you a cup of coffee to go, which I always take them up on. However, they still use styrofoam cups at Brady's. They need to get with the times. But it's what I've got today. And it's good coffee, so I guess we'll take the good with the styrofoam. How have you been? I hope you have had a good couple of weeks since I talked to you last. Have you had any winter weather? I know some people are getting it. We aren't. We get a little bit of snow and then it melts. And like it's been cold the last couple of days, but super, super sunny, which honestly, we get so little sun here in our little corner of the woods. Well, southwestern Pennsylvania in general. It gets so little sun during the winter that when you get it, you don't complain no matter how cold it is. It has really, really been lovely. So I'm enjoying that. It is sunny, but I do have the overhead light on today just because it's early, yet it's like what? It's 9:30, not even 9:30. And so the sun is mostly back behind me where I'm at in the house. So I need the light. Hopefully that works for you. I don't think it's too bad. Anyway, well, I hope you've been doing well. You know what? I thought I haven't reintroduced myself in a really, really long time, more than just saying, hi, I'm Lisa, known as Fiber Nymph. So I thought I would just give you a little bit of information about me in case you're a newer viewer, because I know we have gotten some newer viewers lately. Thank you for checking the podcast out. I hope you're enjoying it. Basically, I'm married to my husband, Bill. We live in a log home up in the mountains of southwestern Pennsylvania in the Laurel Mountains, which is a beautiful, beautiful area. It's very inspirational for a lot of colorways that I've developed. I am the dyer behind Fiber Nymph Dye Works yarn, and yeah, I work here from my home. I love it. I'm an introvert, so not having to leave my house is just such a bonus. To go to work, right? Just go downstairs. I have 3 adult children who have all flown the coop. I have 1 grandchild who's now 14. Oh my gosh, he's going to be 15 in just a matter of weeks. That is insane. My gosh, he's going to be 15. Really? Wow. Okay. I have to not think about that too hard. Anyway, he lives out of state. I don't get to see him very often, but he's a great kid. No kids here at the house, but we do have lots of pets. We have 6 cats. Yes, 6 cats. 1 neurotic miniature schnauzer and a whole passel of fish. We have freshwater cichlids, which were actually my husband's fish before we got married a few years ago. We will be married 4 years this August. I was realizing that the other day. It's like, where did time go? My gosh. So anyway, yeah, and the dog came with me and one of the cats. The other cats were his. Plus there was 1 other cat here, but that one died and then another one showed up. So it's like a rotating, a rotating door of cats here at our house. Basically, my husband will never ever turn away a stray animal. If it shows up and sticks around, he'll feed it and it becomes ours. So I think that's sweet. He loves animals. Anyway, other than that, what else do you need to know about me? I love doing outdoorsy stuff. I like to kayak. I like to ride my bike. I like to snowshoe when we actually get snow in the winter, which I haven't gotten to do much the last couple of winters. My husband and I both ride motorcycles. I'm fairly new to that, only having learned in the last few years. But we take motorcycle vacations, usually a nice trip once a year. This year, though, we're not going to be taking a big motorcycle trip. We might take like a short, like a long weekend trip or something, but we're going to Ireland in April. That's also just a matter of weeks away at this point. Wow. Yeah, so I'm very excited about that trip. But since we're taking that big trip, we aren't really planning any major motorcycle jaunts. We are hoping to do a canoe trip, though, which is a little less expensive to do. So at least the way we do them. So that's in the semi sort of planning stages, but right now the trip we're planning sort of hinges upon something else, and I'm waiting to hear about that. So I can let you know about that if that works out. Otherwise, who knows? We're always up to something fun. Yeah, I guess that's about it for me. If you ever have any questions, let me know. Anyway, let me tell you what I'm going to talk about today. I've mostly been super busy working on samples for my upcoming show season, which begins 2 weeks from today. My first show of the year. That's the Raggz Fiber Affair, which is happening in Delmont, PA. So if you are anywhere near the greater Pittsburgh area, it's just about 20 miles east of Pittsburgh, I would highly recommend coming out. It's a smaller show, but it's cool. There's a lot of really cool vendors there. So it's at the Delmont Fire Hall, like social hall. So I would love to see you if you come. But I'm getting ready for that, and then I have one other show before our trip to Ireland, and then, I have other ones lined up throughout the rest of the year. They're nicely spaced out this year, which is very exciting. They're not like boom, 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 back to back like they were last year for me. That was harrowing, actually. Yeah, so I've been working on 4 projects, basically, that I've been working on that are all samples for shows. So I'm going to show you those. I really haven't worked on anything that's not sample-oriented. I did not start the convertible fingerless gloves for my son like I told you last time I thought I would do. Never got them started, and it was funny because I talked to him the other day and I'm like, hey, just so you know, I have not forgotten about making those. I haven't had a chance because the whole yarn saga, it took forever to get the yarn, and once it finally got here it was already Christmas, so I basically wrapped up the balls of yarn and gave them to him for Christmas and said, I owe you mittens out of these. And it was funny, his reply was, honestly, I'd kind of forgotten about them. So I'm like, okay, obviously those can come down in my level of guilt. I don't have to worry about that quite so much since he's obviously not worrying about them too much either. He'll get them. It's a perk for the fact that it hasn't been a super cold winter. He hasn't really needed them. Okay, and other than that, I am going to talk a little bit about the 20 and 20 challenge that we're doing in the Fiber Nymph Dye Works group. I've got some 10% to share with you, and then just a little bit of shop news, although there is no news about any shop updates because I don't have any shop updates planned right now. But we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the podcast. So, let's get started with the knitting. This really is very good coffee. Okay, we're going to start with my Wind Waker cowl. Isn't this bag amazing? This is a Fat Squirrel Fibers bag, and I just love these colorful little hedgehogs. They are so cute. Okay, so I am on the 4th color of the color work on this. So this is the Wind Waker cowl by Vera Thoben. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and it's in like a bazillion different languages, I think. Anyway, you can see I've started the gold. So I am making this out of my Ridgetop fingering weight yarn. Ridgetop is an 80-20 Romney Falkland blend that I'm having milled for my shop. It's non-superwash. I love it. It's a toothy wool. It's great for color work. It's great for garments because it really shows the stitch definition well. It's, if you're used to something that's super soft, like a really soft merino or something with cashmere, and that's what you like to wear against your skin, this probably isn't the yarn for you. But if you're good with a toothier kind of yarn, a woollier wool, this is great. I mean, it's not scratchy. I don't consider it scratchy by any means. But, I mean, you know you're wearing wool, you know? So anyway, all right. So this is Wind Waker, color work, obviously. My background color, I told you it was Wisp. I have a funny story about that. And then my 4 contrasting colors are Ember, Lime Green, Peacock, and then I just started the Warm Honey, which you can't see super well there. So I'll show, ooh, there we go. I love this color. So I just started that yesterday. So I have no doubts that I'll get this done before the show. I will definitely get this done before the show. So anyway, it's 600 stitches, as I've told you before. It takes a while. However, I did run into a little bit of a hiccup on this in the past couple of weeks. My main color, I guess I didn't pay attention to the pattern. Shocker, when I first started with regard to yardage requirements, because I kind of assumed maybe I'd be able to do the whole thing with one ball of yarn, but I ran out. Granted, my ridgetop fingering has 400 yards in a skein, and it calls for 450. Who knows if my gauge is right on this or not? I didn't check because it's a cowl, you know, it doesn't really matter, and I would prefer to err on the loose side anyway, since it is color work, and I feel like I'm doing pretty well with that. It's not at all super puckery. In fact, I think my floats look pretty good back there. I mean, you can see a little bit of puckering, I guess, but you know, it's not blocked either. Anyway, so I ran out of my first ball of the main color. I thought, well, that's no problem, because I've got a lot of partial balls of Wisp laying around because I use it a lot. And so I grabbed another one and started knitting with it, and I'm like, this looks very different. Can you see where I'm going with this? I'm like, that's weird. I'm like, well, maybe this is just like an extra light one or something. So I went and I got another one. Same issue. And so the way we do sometimes, I'm like, well, maybe if I just start knitting with it and try to like blend it in by slipping a few stitches here and there, it'll be okay. So I did probably about a round and a half that way, and I thought, no, this is not going to work. So I was in the studio that day, and I dyed myself another skein of Wisp, thinking, I'll get this right. And while I was at it, I dyed my other 2 grays. I do 3 grays on my ridgetop bases. I do Wisp, I do Graphite, which is slightly darker, and then I do Soot, which is a much darker gray. So I dyed up 1 skein of all 3 of those just to have them on hand. And long story short, when I was done, that Wisp skein did not match up with this either. However, the Graphite skein matched up with it. So apparently what I had done when I started this project was, see, I have a bin over yonder that I keep 1 skein of each color that I dye on a ridgetop. I keep 1 in that bin as a reference, just because everything dyes up differently on these non-superwash bases than they do on superwash. So I like to have a skein of it just handy to refer to for multiple reasons, not the least of which I sometimes have people say, you know, I'm trying to put together, you know, yarn for color work. What would this, and this look like together? And I can pull them out of there and take a picture and send it to them, and then that helps them decide on colors. So if you ever need to do that, let me know, and I can probably help you out with that, you know, putting different skeins together so you can see what they'll look like. Anyway, long story short, I also kind of grab from that bin occasionally if I'm in a pinch for a project, and I don't always remember to dye up a replacement skein for it right away. And so I think what had happened was I had already pulled that Wisp skein out for somebody for something, and I never re-dyed it. So whenever I saw the Graphite skein, I assumed it was Wisp, because when you don't see them right next to one another, they look like it's easy to mistake Graphite for Wisp, because like I said, they're both sort of light grays. If they're right next to each other, you can very much see a difference, obviously. So I think that's what happened. I had just grabbed Graphite, assuming it was a Wisp, and then that's why I was having such a conundrum putting more Wisp together with the Graphite, because it wasn't Wisp. So in the meantime, I have started using the Wisp, but it did require me to tink back about 900 stitches. Not fun, let me tell you, but I just sat and did it one day. It was fine. I had to be in the right mindset. So that's my story with my Wind Waker. Had a little bit of a hiccup, but we're back on track and it's going well, and I can't wait to have it done. I think it's going to be so pretty. The next project I'm going to show you is my Seamark Pullover. This is a pattern by Rachel Brockman. It's a, Wool It was in Wool People Volume 13, so it's a Brooklyn tweed pattern. And I'm on the fun part now that has all the cables. I think when you saw it last, I was still doing the back, which is basically all just stockinette. And this is the front that has these two cable columns that run up it, which in retrospect, it's probably they're going to run right over my boobs. But you know what? It's fine. I'm enjoying these cables. It's been a while since I've done anything that has this intricate of a cable going on, and I am really enjoying it. And as far as I know, I have not screwed the cables up. I have occasionally forgotten to do a cable in these ones on either side, but I usually see it soon enough that I can just drop down a few rows and do it and then pick back up and I'm okay. But I don't think I've done any miscrossings, which that's always hazardous. So yeah, it's going well. I think I told you the last time that my gauge is off on this, and it's definitely going to be larger than what it should be for this size, but it's supposed to have positive ease, and I was knitting a size that wouldn't have given me much positive ease had the gauge been correct. So I feel like it's probably going to work out okay. Worst comes to worst, I'll probably just toss it in the dryer for a little bit once it's all put together, like with a damp towel, and firm it up, because this is my Ridgetop DK weight. So same yarn that I was using for the cowl, except the heavier weight. So it's non-superwash, so it will snug up. And hopefully I can do that without just totally felting it. So anyway, not much else to tell you about this. I would say I'm probably about an inch away from starting the armhole shaping. I told you I modified it. This is supposed to be a low in the back, high in the front hem. It's a split hemline, and I did not like the amount of difference there was between the back and the front. They had a significant amount of difference. I think it was like 2 or 3 inches. I modified it so that it's only going to have about an inch of difference. That I can handle. I'm not crazy about that look on me. It looks really cute on people who are smaller than me and do not have as much of a chest as I do, but like when you have boobs, like that's pulling the front of your sweater up anyway. I don't need it. I don't need any help with it being shorter, so you know, whatever. But this is Ridgetop DK in the lime color, and it's coming along quite well. I'm hopeful. I would love to have time to just finish off the front of this weekend. Yeah, I don't know. It's on US 7 needles right now. The hems were done on US 5. And I also started one of the sleeves. Now I am alternating skeins on the body. I did on the back and I'm doing it on the front. The sleeve I'm not, mainly because this is a fairly consistent color. This to me, when I hold this next to one of those other pieces, it really doesn't look very much different than the ones that I alternated, so I'm not feeling that's going to be a problem. Plus, I'm going to be able to get an entire sleeve out of one ball of yarn, so I'm not running a risk of having to add a new ball and then suddenly seeing a line, so I'm not very worried about it. I am somewhat modifying how I'm doing the sleeves because I'm not confused. I'm a little perplexed about the increases. The number of increases are very different between the different sizes in this sweater. And this sweater does have quite a size range, so I think it's fairly size inclusive, especially when you consider that there's positive ease built into it. But I was supposed to do 13, I'm supposed to do 13 sleeve increases. And I was doing every 8 rows. And I was holding this up neck to my arm and wrapping it around. It's wow, if I'm increasing that quickly, that many times, this is going to be a very, very roomy sleeve. And I wasn't thinking that was going to really be great. So I did, let's see, one, two, I think I did two, I may have done three. I'm not going to sit here and count. No, I think I did two of them that quickly, and then I started doing them every 12 rounds. And that's what I'm going to do until I get to the length. And I may not end up with the right number of stitches, but I will just make it work whenever I get to the point of setting the sleeve in. The sweater is going to be oversized to begin with. I mean, it's supposed to, like I said, it's supposed to have positive ease, a good amount of positive ease. But oversized sweaters, as far as I'm concerned, like boxy sweaters and stuff, they're fine. But if the sleeves are not snug enough, that's when they just look messy. Like if you at least still have a tight enough fitting sleeve, it's helping to hold the shape of the sweater up here. And then the rest of it can be big and roomy. I mean, I don't want the sleeves to like be sectioned to my arms, but I need them to be close enough that they're going to be giving it some shape. So I'm just concerned that the sleeves are going to end up being super, super roomy. And so I think I'm aiming for a sleeve count that will be down at least one size, maybe even two. And I think that'll work out okay. So that is my Seamark Pullover. I'm very happy about that, and I'm really enjoying knitting on it. It's so pleasurable, and I love doing those cables. I cable without a cable needle, and the biggest cables in that are 6-stitch cables, so you're crossing 3 over 3, and I'm not having a problem with that. That's one of the bonuses of working with a woolier wool, because when you do that and you have those loose stitches hanging there before you put them back on the needle, they don't really go anywhere, you know. Or if I get to a point where I do have to drop down a couple rows to fix a cable that I forgot to do, like I can do that, and I'm not afraid of everything running away. It just sort of hangs there and waits for me, so that's cool. All right, 2 other projects that I'm working on that will be show samples, and they are not knitting related, actually. One, I have to reach, is a crochet project. One of my goals this year in adding new samples to my booth is to have some crochet samples. That's something that I've talked about with a few customers over the years, especially ones who come in wearing something that's crocheted. The conversation has been about how you don't see samples in crochet very often, and so I would really like to add some. As you know, I'm not a very experienced crochetist. But I'm learning. I'm only learning. I'm doing okay. I feel like this is going okay. I can granny square. You know that. I can granny square. I can granny stripe. I can chain. And I can do some edgings if I need to, like for buttonholes or something. But this used some stitch. Okay, this. I should show it to you. This is the Dragon Belly Shawl by Joanna Lindahl, I believe. Let me see. Yes, Joanna Lindahl from the Miho Crochet website. If you listen to Jen from Down Cellar Studios podcast, she crocheted several of these for holiday gifts last year. That's where I first heard about it. And so I looked it up, and it is just a 2-row repeat. So you're doing the same thing, you know, 1 row, 2 rows, and then you repeat. And it just keeps growing. So here it is so far. I'm using one of my color block gradients. This is the dark to fuchsia gradient. So the outside of it is dark. Now, yardage wise, I'm hoping to do this in just one ball of yarn. The pattern calls for around 600-ish yards. This is only 490, so it's going to be a little bit smaller, but I think it'll be okay with regard to showing the patterning, and it'll just be a smaller shawl. So we'll see. I'll make that decision. I do have a second ball of this hanging out, so if I wanted to, I could repeat it and make it extra big, but I think for the sake of this upcoming show, I'm just hoping to get this done with the 1 ball, and then I can always add to it later if I want to. So anyway, it's coming along really well. I had to YouTube to remind myself what a double crochet is, because I also know that they're different in English terminology versus UK terminology. And I think Joanna Lindahl is not from the US, but her patterns are written in, maybe this is the one that's in a whole bunch of languages and not the Wind Waker. I could have been mistaken on that. The Wind Waker scratch that. I don't think that one's in a lot of different languages. I think it's the Dragon Belly Shawl, which is also a free pattern, by the way. At least I'm fairly sure it is. But that's the one that is in a lot of different languages. Sorry. So yeah, I did have to look up how to do the double crochet. So I watched a YouTube video on that, and that wasn't hard. And then there's a technique of crocheting through the front post, which I had no idea what that meant. So found a video on that, and I'm good. Basically, I have the pattern memorized. It's not difficult at all. I'm looking at this now, and I'm like, am I doing something wrong? No, I'm not. It's okay. It's just not pulled enough up there. So I think it's pretty cool looking. It's easy. And it'll be a sample. It'll be fine. So I'm using which hook am I using? I think an H. Yeah, an 5mm. The pattern actually calls for using a G, I think. I couldn't find any of my G hooks. I know I have some. I don't have like an extensive hook library around, but I do have several, and they're all like old. They're ones that were my grandmother's, basically. These are Boy, I think. Yeah. So anyway, that is that project, and this color block gradient is on my Heavenly base. Oh, you know what? It's on my Heavenly base, so it's not 490 yards. That's what Sunshine is, which I do a lot of my gradients on. This is 438 yards, so it will be a little bit smaller, but like I said, I can always add on to it and make it bigger for the next show. So that is that project, and then the last project is actually a weaving project, because I would also like to add some woven samples to my booth. So, do you remember this cowl that I did last fall? So this is DK weight yarn that I used, and this is also my yarn. This is Bonafide DK in the Iron Oxide Red and Tree Frog Green, and this is a houndstooth pattern. Not herringbone. I called it herringbone the whole time I was showing it to you last year, but it's not. It's houndstooth. You can probably see the patterning there. I can't see it on the screen because my eyes are really wonky today. That's why I keep putting my glasses on and off. But anyway, you should be able to see it. It's kind of subtle since both of these colors are a little bit dark. Anyway, I wove, this strip. It's probably, I want to say it ended up being, it's between 5 and 6 feet long. And then what I ended up doing was, after I had it off the loom and it was seamed, I did the seaming stitch at the end, I seamed these two edges together and trimmed that fringe to have this fringy cowl. So when it's on, let's see if I can do this. I have to turn it inside out to end up with the fringe on the outside once it's on. Okay, this is going to look a little wonky with this particular shirt, but you'll get the general idea. Okay, so that's basically how it sits once it's on. I just think it's a lot of fun. I love having this little column of fringe here. It's not long. It's just, maybe a couple inches long. And it's super comfy. It's super warm. I've worn it a lot this winter, actually. I love cowls. I usually put it on a little neater than that, but you get the idea. So anyway, I wanted to do another one of these. However, I was thinking, not specifically for this, but in general, I had the idea of wanting to weave with both my ridgetop fingering, and I want to weave with my mountain tweed base, my fingering base. I didn't think mountain tweed would be a spectacular yarn to warp with, though, because of the tweedy little bits. Like, you see the tweedy little bits. I just figured they would kind of, I don't know. I thought they would get awfully worn as you're like weaving and you're having to bring the heddle down to beat your weft in place and everything. So I decided what I would do is mix the two. I would warp with my ridgetop base. It's a 3-ply, and it's a semi-worsted is I think how my mill refers to it. So it's not, like if you think of Brooklyn tweed shelter, no, loft, although I think shelter is that way too. It's a woolen spun yarn, and you know how easily you can break it. if you've ever worked with it. Although, ironically, I did weave with that one. The very first weaving project I ever did many years ago on the first loom that I had, I wove with loft as both warp and weft. And I didn't break it. I'm not sure what I did wrong, because you would think putting that tension on it for a warp would have been horrible, but it worked, so whatever. But this is quite strong. It's a 3-ply. You can pull. It's not breaking, so it's good. So I decided I would warp with this. And to do a houndstooth pattern, you warp 2 threads of one color, then 2 threads of the other color, and you go back and forth. So I warped with wisp, actually wisp, and soot. So that's wisp and soot were my warp, and then I'm weaving the weft part with my mountain tweed. So wisp again, but this is soft black, which is sort of similar. It's a different base color, a different base dye, but it coordinates pretty well. So that's what I'm doing, and I absolutely love what I'm getting out of this. Now I'm doing this, I have to try to lift my loom up to show you. I'm doing this on my small loom because I still don't have my larger loom together. So this is my Ashford 10-inch sample it rigid heddle loom, and here is what the fabric looks like. Isn't that fun? I love seeing those little tweedy flecks in there. I just love it. Now, if you're an experienced weaver, you're looking at this saying, that looks a little messed up, because it's not straight. I mean, the tension is weird. I'm still not perfect at getting my warp tension right. But I've also got mitigating factors going on here, because the day I warped my loom, I was not feeling good. I had not slept well the night before. I didn't get a lot of sleep. I was really kind of tired, and it was a cold day, so I was sort of achy to begin with, and not getting enough sleep makes things worse. Had a fire going in the fireplace, so I didn't have any overhead lights on. I was just working with the natural light, which in the living room on a dreary, snowy-ish kind of day, I don't know if it was snowing that day or not, but whatever. It's not super bright out there, but I didn't want overhead lights on. Long story short, those are not the best circumstances to warp your loom. Because I ended up accidentally double threading not 1, but 2 slots in the loom, and I didn't realize it until after it was all done, and I was getting ready to pull the second thread through all the holes, slaying the reed, I believe that's called. I looked at it and I'm like, something looks off. And lo and behold, something was really off. So I thought, okay, well, when I get to that point, I will just shift. The one that's wrong, I'll shift them over, no problem. Well, great idea in theory, but you know what? That creates a giant problem. And this has been a very good learning experience for me, actually, in 2 different ways. Number 1, you can see, you can just see looking at this, coming over this way, it's not, right here, there's a goof up. But over this way is where it really gets wonky. From about this point yeah, you can see these. Those shouldn't be there. It was right about here, the center of the thing, that it started to, I had to do the crossing over. And then I got to this point, and that's where I found the second double threaded slot. I hadn't seen that one originally. So then I ended up having to drop this extra thing, which is why I've got these just threads here I keep cutting off, because I had extra warp threads. And so I was having to cross over again to mitigate that catastrophe, and ended up with 2 more. The problem is when you have to do that crossing over, that makes this is awkward, but that makes these threads want to stick to each other when you're raising and lowering your heddle. And I've had that happen before, and I always thought, oh, it's just the kind of yarn that I'm using. But no, it could partly be that, but I think it's more the fact that because I've crossed those threads over, back here, they aren't straight, and that is affecting how they are in the front whenever they're on, even though the heddle is acting to keep them organized. The fact that they are disorganized back here is affecting how well they go where they're supposed to when you raise and lower the heddle. That and the fact that I did realize finally that it does make a difference which thread you pull through the hole. I never thought there was much of a difference. I thought you just took one, but if you can see here, like, I don't know how well you can see it. I mean, they're laying flat. There's two threads, but they're laying flat, and you really do need to take the one closest to the hole through the thread, or through the closest to the hole through the hole, rather than switching it, because there you're doing a little crossover too. I'm sure there's technical terminology for all of this. I do not know it, but basically I'm learning through doing, and that's actually the best way for me to learn. So what I've had to do, since it's worse when I lower the heddle than when I raise it, I don't know that you're going to, actually right now it's not too bad, but usually like when I have it lowered, I look through here and I can see some random threads kind of not quite in the right position. So what I've been doing is taking my pickup stick that I have and threading it in through the shed, which is that area between your upper and lower warp threads. And I've been putting that in there just to make sure that everything's separated appropriately. And then I turn it up like that, and that helps hold everything where it's supposed to be. Then I can put my stick shuttle through without getting caught on a thread that's being hung up a little bit by my weird crossover issue. So it's an extra step in the weaving process, but it doesn't take long and it yields a much better result. So that's where that's going. And I'm enjoying it. And like I said, I really love what the fabric looks like, even if my process is less than perfect. And it's definitely less than perfect. But again, I'm new at this, and I feel like I'm learning important things through my mistakes. And that's all you can ask for, right? So anyway, if you are a more experienced weaver and you have any thoughts on any of that I just said, or you have any tips or ideas for me on how to handle those issues, like, don't just tell me, turn the light on. I know that now. But yeah, I'd be happy to hear any insights anybody might have on any of that stuff I just shared. So in the end, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to finish this weaving, and then I'm going to do the same thing I did with this. I'm going to seam it together and have little bits of fringe, and it will be a nice fringy cowl that will be on my display, hopefully. I'm pretty hopeful at this point that I can get that done, the weaving done, the sweater done, and the Wind Waker cowl done. I don't know if I'll get this finished. This is sort of lowest on my priority list to get finished for this show coming up. But if I can get those three things done, I'll be really happy. All right, so those are all my projects. I told you I didn't start the convertible fingerless gloves, and that's fine because my son's not like pining for them. The 20 and 20 challenge is going on. We're still in the first quarter is half over, so if you're taking part, that thread's been pretty chatty actually, so head on over there and join in. It's never too late to join in. The lists thread is closed until the first week of April, or the first 2 weeks of April, I can't remember. Did I say the first 2 weeks? Whatever. The beginning of April, the lists thread will open again, so if you did not have a chance to submit a list for the beginning of the year, you can do it at the beginning of April and still participate for those last 3 quarters. I mean, you can be participating now and just have your own list and then add it to the groups thread in April. That's fine too. It's a very low-key challenge, so to speak. You're challenging yourself, nobody else. And it's always open to like changes if you want to change things up, what have you. I feel like I'm doing pretty well. Actually, these 2 skeins of yarn, these 2 mountain tweed skeins, were on my list. They weren't on my active list that I uploaded, but they were on my larger picture list for the year. So those will get added in retroactively once I finish weaving with them. But yeah, it's fun. It's just a way to motivate yourself and to have chatter with other people who are, you know, working on projects that they're motivated to work on through the end of the year. You can do a list for yarns you want to use. You can do a list for knitting projects or crochet or whatever, like projects you want to make. and then fiber and spinning. Those are the 3 lists I did. But as I've told people, if you're a, I don't know, if you're a, I don't even know what I want to say. If you have a specific craft or maybe a specific project, I think there was somebody who was doing like charity hats, and they had a goal for how many charity hats they wanted to do throughout the year. I think they made a list specifically for that. You can do that too. Whatever works for you. Just come and join in the fun. I think my husband might have just come home. I heard a door. Anyway, yep, that's it for 90%. Let's jump to 10%. Basically, things are going okay. I'm still, pursuing new recipes for my new mostly plant-based diet. I made a vegetarian meatloaf last week that actually turned out pretty good. It wasn't meatloaf, but honestly, I don't love meatloaf. But this one was really tasty, and it held together, which I hear is a feat to do with vegetarian meatloaf. I'll include a link to the recipe. I did change some things up in the recipe because I didn't have all of the ingredients on hand, and I think that affected the flavor a little bit because it wasn't quite as tasty as it might have been had I had some of the ingredients that it had actually called for. But now I know, and I can, tweak it the next time I make it. What else? I keep thinking I'm experimenting with different like products, like nutritional yeast and vegan cheeses and meat substitutes, things like that. And I keep thinking maybe sometime I will do like a little extra video just talking about the products that I've found that I've really been enjoying. Because I really was it's all kind of like a shot in the dark thing for me. It's kind of like I'm throwing stuff up against the wall and seeing what sticks with regards to these foods. Outside of things I read about online or what people tell me about. But for the most part, I'm just kind of going to the store and saying, well, that looks interesting. I'll try that. And for the most part, I would say things have been pretty good. I've had a couple of duds, but for the most part, it's okay. But I'm still also eating just a ton of fresh fruits and vegetables. Still getting our Misfits box, which is amazing. Love the veggies. I now get to choose each week what we get. Which when I first signed up for Misfits, you couldn't do that. They're adding people to the customizing list slowly as they go. So now I get to customize my box every week. So on Thursdays, I get to choose what I want for my next shipment. But my shipment date is now on Thursdays also, because I'm a customizing customer and they only ship those on certain days or something. I don't know. So it used to be Tuesday. Now we get our box on Thursday. So I'm getting my box, but then I'm also choosing for my next week's box. So by the time the next Thursday rolls around, I've kind of forgotten what I picked. So it's still sort of a surprise. I would say I'm probably choosing about 75% of things that I know that we like and I would buy anyway. And then that other 25% is things that I'm like trying different things that maybe I wouldn't always buy or wouldn't think to buy. So it's still a pretty good mix that way. And, it's a varied diet in that respect. I have kind of slacked off on yoga this month. Not on purpose, but number one, because I'm deep in show dyeing mode, this room, which is where I do my yoga, is also very full of bins of yarn that I'm dealing with. So my floor space has become more minimal. I kind of have to push things out of the way in order to do yoga. But also, I told you I did the whole January home thing that Yoga with Adrienne was doing, which was nice because it was day-to-day continuity and the whole thing built on itself. Whereas in February, she puts together a calendar and there's a theme, but the individual videos are very different and they were filmed at different times because they're ones that she already has out there. And I think it's the lack of continuity that's like not jiving with me. So I think for March, I'm probably going to go and either redo the January videos or pick one of her other like past year January cohesive programs that she did and do that, because that seems to work better for me. But I do know, having not done yoga for almost a week, and then I did it one day, it's like, oh my gosh, my body is so stiff. I can't believe it got that stiff in that short of amount of time. It's amazing. So I'm trying to be a little bit better about getting my yoga back in. But like I said, work really has gotten busy for me. 2 weeks out from a show, so it's kind of like dye all the yarn, dyeing all the time, working. So I really have to kind of remember to fit in the good things. I will say I have added a new obsession. It's a listening obsession, so I can do it while I'm working. And it's a podcast called the Prancing Pony Podcast. If you are a Lord of the Rings or J.R.R. Tolkien fan in general, you will love this podcast. It's been around for a few years, so maybe you already know about it. I stumbled upon it accidentally because I was searching for something else related to another author who is into that same kind of writing. Anyway, I found it. It's these two guys who are very knowledgeable about Tolkien, his writings, both the Lord of the Rings Legendarium and the works outside of the Legendarium. It's so interesting. And because I have been listening to this and binging on this, I'm now... Sorry, just dropped my ruler. I'm now planning to actually read the Silmarillion in paperback form as opposed to audiobook. I guess I should say in paper book form, not paperback, even though it is a paperback. I've owned this for a very long time. I've never read it because it's always been so daunting. But see, what the podcast does is they go through, if you start back at the very beginning, I think about episode 5, that's when they start in on reading through different books. And they start with the Silmarillion. They don't read the entire book because they can't, copyright issues, but they read excerpts from it and then they discuss it. And they, kind of analyze different parts and they converse about it. And then they go back to other, secondary resources that give some explanation. Some of those were written by Tolkien himself. Some of them have been by other authors since then. It is fascinating. So I'm so sucked into this, and I've always got Lord of the Rings kind of running in the background anyway of my life because I love it so very much. I've been watching the movies kind of non-stop the last couple of months. Like if I'm sitting and I have time to watch something and I'm not watching a podcast, I have the movies on. In fact, one day earlier this week, I binged 2.5 of the movies because I was working upstairs that day and I just had them on, which means now I have to start back over at the beginning to see if I can get through all 3 of them in one day. I have done that before. It's crazy. But anyway, and I've listened to the audiobooks recently. I listened to The Hobbit most recently again. I've read all those books. I just love them so much. So anyway, I am planning to read the Silmarillion, and I also just purchased Unfinished Tales of Numenor and Middle-earth. Both of these books were edited by Christopher Tolkien, who is J.R.R. Tolkien's one son, who actually, he just passed away in January. I didn't know that. I just found that out recently. But he did so much to carry on his father's work. It's just incredible. So, yeah, I'm totally nerding out over Lord of the Rings stuff. More so than usual. I would say back when sorry, I get so excited. I first got into Lord of the Rings, not when I was younger. Like when I was in high school, I knew it existed, but it was like the stuff that the really nerdy kids read and they played Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. Was that even around when I was a teenager? Maybe not. That could have been later on. I don't know. Maybe when my oldest son was young. Anyway, no, when the first movie came out, I ended up going to see it with a group of people. It's like I wasn't into it at all, but I'm like, sure, I'll go. And I got sucked in. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so after I saw the movie, that's when I read the first book. And then I had to read the next one and the next one. I think I read all 3 of the Lord of the Rings books before I saw the second movie. So I was really into them. And then I read The Hobbit to my kids. And then I also read a lot of nonfiction about Tolkien. I read his autobiography what's his name? Humphrey. I can't remember the guy's name now. Anyway, he wrote about Tolkien's life. I think he also did a biography of the Inklings, maybe? Oh, no. Somebody else did that one. The Inklings was a writing group that included Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and two or 3 other writers, I think. I can't remember back in that day. They used to get together and meet at a pub, which is awesome. And the collection of letters I think that Humphrey's guy did that too. I can't remember his name. I don't know why. Anyway, I kind of got into that, and I read all that stuff like 20 some years ago now. But it's been a while, and so a lot of it I've sort of forgotten. But as I'm listening to this podcast, like, it's jogging my memory with a lot of it, and I'm really enjoying it. So anyway, that's the Prancing Pony podcast. If you're interested, you can find it on a lot of different podcast streaming apps. Hi, I just finished recording like 5 minutes ago, and then I walked out of the room, and my husband had been doing some errands, and he was up at the post office, and they gave us our mail for the day, and in it was one thing for me that I just thought I would show you, since it has to do with what I was already gushing about with the Lord of the Rings stuff. Another book that I had ordered came, The Ring of Words, Tolkien and the Oxford English Dictionary. J.R. Tolkien, when he came back from World War I, he worked for the Oxford English Dictionary, putting it together as a lexicographer, I think. Anyway, so this book is something about that. And this is by Peter Gilliver, Jeremy Marshall, and Edmund Weiner. Yeah. And so this talks about, I think, his time working with the Oxford English Dictionary. And then it also talks about him building his languages that ended up being the foundation for his books. And so then it also sort of has a word study in it that talks about the origins and the backgrounds of some of the words from his created languages. That's what I think is so cool about his stories. You know, it wasn't like, oh, here I'm going to write a story, and oh, I'm going to make up a language for the story. No, he had created those languages, like the Elven languages and all of these other languages, for the stories. And then he's like, okay, I need somebody to speak these languages. And so then he wrote the books. Like, who does that? Tolkien. Tolkien does that. So anyway, this is a book that the guys from that Prancing Pony podcast, they refer to this a lot for their word nerdery sections. And I just love that, because I'm totally a word nerd anyway. And so I had to get this book. So anyway, I just wanted to pop in and share this with you, since it just came and I didn't want to wait another 2 weeks to tell you about it. So I'll just add it to my little pile of Tolkien goodness there. And yeah, I'm a weirdo and a nerd who loves Lord of the Rings stuff and Tolkien and thinks he's amazing. So, okay, back to the rest of the podcast now. Moving on now from that to shop news. Again, I don't have a lot because there is not a shop update coming up anytime soon. There won't be until after this first show, which is on the 7th of March. Did I even mention the date when I talked about it earlier? I don't think I did. March 7th is my show in Delmont. That information will all be in the show notes. I will be doing, like I said, I'm going to be doing a new Pi Day colorway for Pi Day in March. I hope to have a sample of that to show you by the next time I podcast at the beginning of March. So stay tuned for that. I'm also working on the customer favorites colorway. I kind of know what I want to do. I just don't have time to dye it quite yet. So that will also be coming in March. There are still a lot of goodies in the shop right now, though, from my last update, like the color play yarns. There's still a good number of that. I think all the self-striping's gone, I think, but I'm looking over here on the shelves. But there's still plenty of the variegated and the semi-tonals is what I'm calling them, because they're kind of a cross between semi-solids and tonals. Still a lot of that. I fixed the fiber listing. The fiber listing for the color play was really messed up, and I didn't realize it until a few days after the update. So if you were interested in the fiber, it's up, and the listing's fixed, and the prices are correct, and it should make sense now. And the minis, oh my gosh, thank you so much for your enthusiasm over my mix and match minis option that I have in the shop now. Again, you can still buy them singly if you just want to add one to your order or something. I mean, you can just buy one if you want it, although shipping wise that might be a little weird. But anyway, the mix and match 5 for $20. I've had tons of orders of that come in, so thank you so much. I'm glad you're enjoying those. I really enjoy offering that, and that's something I'll be continuing to offer at shows as well. Otherwise, let's see. The monthly makes program is still going on. You can check that out, that thread out in the Ravelry group as well. Just to let you know, if you're somebody who participated in 2019 and you have prize yarns coming to you, here's where I'm at with that. I think at this point I have everybody's second half of the year reward skeins dyed up. So I think those are all done. If you were one of the people who ordered like a sweater lot and you wanted one of your skeins for your sweater lot to be your free skein, that has already been shipped to you. You've received that. If you're someone who was just getting a single skein, I'm hanging on to those so I can ship those along with the full year skein if you have a full year skein coming to you. There was a couple people who only participated in the second half. I think I have shipped yours out, but I maybe not. I have to double check on that. If I still owe you that because you only participated in the second half and you're not getting the full year skein, I will get that out to you really soon. Excuse me. I have all of the striping patterns wound for the full year participation skein. I have to dye them yet. I can't guarantee that those are going to get dyed before this show, though. They may get dyed, but I probably won't have the time to reskein them. So you can be looking for those to go out to you probably mid-March. I apologize that it's taking that long, but there was a lot of you, and there's a lot of yarn, and like I said, I'm in the middle of show prep, so it is taking a little longer, but it is coming, and I hope you'll enjoy it once you get it. If you have any questions about that, if you are a participant and you want to know, where's my yarn, feel free to message me or email me. I'll be happy to let you know where things are with that. And if you really, really need your free skein from the second half sooner than that, because you have a project that you were trying to do or something, let me know, and I'll see what I can do about getting that out to you sooner. Okay, otherwise, the only other thing that's still hanging out there is that donation that I'm going to be making to those 2 Australian wildfire funds. I'm not doing that until the end of February because my pattern sales on Ravelry are also going into that. So I'm leaving that open. There is a little bit of Fabulous Fruits yarn left in the shop right now, which was one of my Valentine's Day ish colorways that I was using for Valentine's Day. So any more of those, if they sell in February, a portion of those sales will also go into that donation. But otherwise, all of the Valentine's Day's colorways are gone. So I thank you so much to anybody who purchased one of those, and thank you that you're helping to make a difference. I'm really happy to hear that Australia is like getting rain now that is helping to curtail the fires. But even still, I mean, the damage was so excessive. I'm sure those agencies that are helping to, help people and animals are going to be using those funds for many, many, many months to come. Probably years, I would say. So anyway, the money will be going to good causes. I think that's everything. Again, this is probably longer than I would like it to be, but again, it's also been quite a while since I recorded last, so this is what you get. I did actually record a little a tutorial the other day on how to make pom-poms using the Clover pom-pom makers. Like, if you don't know what I'm talking about these things, these Clover pom-pom makers. I had to make pom-poms for something the other day, and I thought, I could do a tutorial on this. I don't know if there's any interest in that, but I just remember when I first got these, like, the instructions on the pom-pom maker packaging weren't super explicit, so I thought maybe somebody would like to see how they work. I mean, maybe you don't own one and you're thinking, do I really need one? And you could see how they work. If I get a chance, I will edit that and put that up. It's maybe kind of a goofy thing to do a tutorial on, but why not, right? So I did do that. It probably won't be up before this video is up, so don't look for it quite yet. But, if you subscribe to this channel, you'll see it when it pops up once I get it up. So anyway, okay, that's everything. Have a good next couple of weeks. I will be coming to you again sometime in the first week of March, so the gap between the 2 podcasts won't be quite as long. So have a good couple of weeks. Or as Amy Beth said, and I love this, her most recent episode, The Fat Squirrel Speaks, she said, I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember her exact words. She's like, I hope you have good moments in like the next week or two, you know? And that made so much sense to me because, you know, I can say, oh, I hope the next couple of weeks are awesome for you. Well, every moment of every day isn't going to be awesome. That's the nature of life. But, like, I hope you have some really awesome moments, you know? Even if the rest of them suck, like, it's the awesome moments that make us appreciate life and not want to, like, you know, just sit in a dark corner in the fetal position. So have some really good moments coming up. More good moments than bad, if possible. But, you know, anyway, I'll talk to you in a couple weeks. Bye.